Please, it's an emergency. Don't get in the car. What's going on there?
Today, this Wingstop in Fayetteville was closed, a paper sign on the door. Fayetteville police say it's where 19-year-old Kalia Jones was kidnapped last night while she was at work.
He's making her get in the car. He's making her get in his car.
This is the account of Kalia Jones, a vibrant 19-year-old whose life took a tragic turn. She found herself in a difficult situation with Cameron Hopkins, her former boyfriend, and their relationship led to heartbreak and horror. Kalia's promising life was abruptly cut short under chilling circumstances, leaving her loved ones in the community grappling with shock and grief. The devastating events that unfolded forever changed the trajectory of Kalia's life. As the investigation progressed, surprising truths came to light, revealing a dark plot. This story transports us to Lovejoy, a peaceful sanctuary nestled in the heart of Clayton County, Georgia. In this picturesque town, a tragic tale of a young life unfolds. Allow me to introduce Kalia Jones, a name that resonates with the memories of those fortunate enough to have known her. Kalia's journey began in Lovejoy, where she attended Lovejoy High School and left an indelible mark on her community. From a young age, Kalia exuded kindness and grace. With a heart as vast as her dreams, she embraced life with a sweetness and humility that were truly extraordinary. Her days were illuminated by her radiant smile, one that seemed to brighten the world around her. Even in elementary school, Kalia's presence was magnetic, leaving a lasting impression on her classmates and teachers. Her grace and humility were as remarkable as her talents, which flourished as she became a soaring Eagles dancer at Robert Cross Middle School. Beyond her accomplishments, Kalia's genuine spirit and infectious smile were her trademarks. Kalia Jones and Cameron Hopkins had a relationship that was far from simple. While the exact nature of their connection remains undisclosed, it is evident that they were intertwined in each other's lives for a significant period of time. However, as the layers of their bond are unraveled, a more intricate narrative emerges. Amid their intertwined history, there were hints of turmoil, with allegations of abusive conduct casting a shadow over what could have appeared as a typical romantic relationship. This intricacy brings a layer of complexity to the tragic series of events that transpired. A horrifying crime occurred on July 16, 2023, in Lovejoy, Georgia. Kalia Jones, a 19-year-old known for her infectious smile, found herself in a terrifying predicament. Cameron Hopkins, age 20, abducted Kalia from her workplace, a Wingstop in Fayetteville. This chilling incident took place exactly 1 year after Hopkins had previously abducted Kalia at gunpoint on July 17, 2022, in a Walmart parking lot, shattering her car window with a handgun. He forcibly pulled her out of the vehicle at gunpoint and compelled her into his car before fleeing the scene. Authorities stated that Hopkins was enraged because Kalia had threatened to end their relationship. Sadly, this time, Kalia would encounter an even grimmer destiny. The horror did not stop there. Following the abduction, Hopkins expressed his anger over the relationship's termination and made violent threats against Kalia to her family members over the phone. Cameron Hopkins was charged with kidnapping his former girlfriend, Kalia Jones, and shooting her before being apprehended by the police. He faced multiple charges, including murder and aggravated assault. As the investigation progressed, dashcam footage captured a police pursuit initiated by an officer upon spotting Hopkins's vehicle, leading to a stop near Lovejoy High School. Gunshots were visible in the video, seemingly originating from Hopkins's car. Body camera footage depicted the police's efforts to extract Hopkins from the vehicle amidst the chaotic scene. Hopkins claimed that his girlfriend had been shot, but another officer cast doubt on his account. Kalia was found dead in the vehicle, having sustained multiple gunshot wounds. One officer even claimed to have witnessed Cameron shooting her. Tragically, Cameron Hopkins, who was already facing accusations of kidnapping Kalia Jones, was out on bond at the time of the incident. An administrative error within the Clayton County District Attorney's Office, as acknowledged by court documents and District Attorney Tasha Mosley, allowed Hopkins to remain free despite the potential danger he posed. Kalaya's dreams and aspirations were cut short due to this oversight. During the incident, Hopkins made a chilling statement indicating his capacity for violence, threatening to shoot and kill Kalaya if confronted by the police. Kalaya's family was left with questions and sorrow, wondering why Hopkins had been granted bail given his past actions. Georgia law mandates a 90-day period for securing an indictment following an arrest, which was inadvertently missed, resulting in Hopkins's release. The repercussions were devastating. Clayton County prosecutors eventually obtained an indictment in March 2023, months after the crucial 90-day time frame had passed. However, justice came too late for Kalaya, leaving her family in anguish and a promising young life lost. Despite being released on bail, Cameron Hopkins, the suspect accused of kidnapping and murdering his ex-girlfriend Kalaya Jones, went on to commit another atrocious act, despite prior threats and accusations. Hopkins once again abducted Jones and led law enforcement on a high-speed pursuit that tragically culminated in her death. As the events unfolded, it became apparent that the system's safeguards had failed to avert the tragedy. The heartbreaking saga was further compounded by a high-speed chase that concluded at Lovejoy High School, where Kalaya met her untimely end. Kalaya Jones's mother shared a heart-wrenching account. The untimely demise of Kalaya Jones was a tragedy that could have been avoided. Despite the fact that her ex-boyfriend, Cameron Hopkins, had a history of making threats and engaging in violent behavior, he was still able to take her life. This heartbreaking loss could have been prevented if the legal system had taken different actions. There were numerous mistakes made during the legal process, such as missed deadlines and a lack of proper supervision, which allowed Hopkins to be released on bail even after a previous kidnapping incident involving Kalaya. This failure has left Kalaya's family and loved ones devastated as they mourn the loss of a vibrant young woman who had a bright future ahead of her. The lingering question remains, could more have been done to protect Kalaya? It is imperative that immediate action is taken to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. We must strengthen early intervention programs for domestic violence, improve the oversight of bail conditions, ensure that legal processes are carried out promptly, and enhance the monitoring of individuals who have been released. Collaboration between law enforcement agencies and support services is crucial, as well as the implementation of restraining orders and counseling. By raising public awareness and implementing necessary legal reforms, we can create a safer environment and prevent such incidents from happening again. Christine Paulila's high school experience was marked by torment and bullying until she found solace in the friendship of Tiffany Rowell and Rachel Colarutis, two of the most popular students. With their help, Christine transformed into the girl who was voted as the most irresistible by her classmates. However, beneath the surface, a dark and jealous streak began to emerge, leading Christine down a path of unimaginable actions. Born on March 31, 1986, in Long Island, New York, Christine was raised by her mother, Lori Paulila, who was a stay-at-home mom, and her father, Charles Paulila, who worked in construction. Tragedy struck when Christine's father died in a work accident when she was just 2 years old. Following her husband's death, Lori turned to drugs, resulting in her losing custody of Christine and her older brother to their grandparents. Adding to Christine's challenges, she was diagnosed with alopecia during her kindergarten years, causing her to lose her hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes. To cope with her hair loss, Christine had to wear wigs and also had poor vision, requiring her to wear heavy glasses. Constant mockery and bullying from her peers took a toll on Christine's self-confidence, further exacerbating her struggles with her appearance. Eventually, Christine was reunited with her mother, who had remarried and overcome her drug addiction. The family moved to Clear Lake City, Texas, where Christine enrolled in Clear Lake High School. It was there that she found acceptance and support from Rachel Colorautis and Tiffany Rowell, who helped her enhance her appearance and fit in with the other students. In 2003, Christine was crowned Miss Irresistible by her fellow classmates. During this time, she also began dating Christopher Lee Snyder, a 21-year-old musician. However, Snyder's drug use and criminal history caused concern for Christine's mother, stepfather, as well as Colorautis and Rowell, who disapproved of the relationship. As time went on, Christine's drug usage escalated, and Snyder isolated her from her loved ones. The relationship became increasingly volatile. According to the relatives of Snyder, Paulilla frequently displayed signs of jealousy. Following a heated argument with Snyder, Paulilla spent the night on the front lawn of her family's residence and made threats to harm them. On July 18, 2003, Paulilla and Snyder visited an acquaintance named Tiffany Rowell in Clear Lake City. Present at the gathering were Rachel Colorautis, Marcus Priscilla, Rowell's boyfriend, and Adalbert Sanchez, Priscilla's cousin. Paulilla claimed that she and Snyder had planned to steal drugs from the house, but an altercation between Snyder and Priscilla resulted in the tragic deaths of Rowell, Colorautis, Priscilla, and Sanchez. All 4 victims sustained multiple gunshot wounds. After being shot, Rachel Colorautis attempted to reach a phone to call 911, but Paulilla struck her repeatedly in the head with a pistol, causing severe injuries. Notably, both Colorautis and Rowell had been shot in the groin area, suggesting a motive rooted in sexual resentment. Due to the lack of substantial evidence left behind by Snyder and Paulilla, authorities initially presumed the murders to be drug-related, as Marcus Priscilla was suspected of selling narcotics from his residence. Adalbert Sanchez had recently relocated to Clear Lake City to escape the violence in Chicago and turn his life around, but tragically, he had only been there for a short period before his untimely death. The sole evidence available to investigators were descriptions of the perpetrators provided by neighbors who had witnessed them entering and leaving the property. Snyder later took Paulilla to Walgreens, where she was expected to work at the makeup counter. Approximately a year after the murders, Paulilla and Snyder ended their relationship in 2004 when Snyder was apprehended in Kentucky for auto theft. Subsequently, Paulilla sought rehabilitation in Kerrville, Texas, shortly after she came across Stanley Justin Rott, a drug addict with whom she initiated a relationship. In March of 2005, they got married. Around that time, Paulilla inherited $360,000 from her father and used some of the money to buy a house. In July 2005, Paulilla watched a news report about the unsolved killings and became agitated after seeing sketches of the suspects provided by neighbors. She confessed to Rott that she and Snyder were the murderers. Following that, they went into hiding and stayed in a hotel room in San Antonio. From November 2005 to July 2006, they remained hidden in the room, indulging in heroin and cocaine. On July 8, 2006, the police received an anonymous tip about the deaths of Rowell, Colorautis, Priscilla, and Sanchez. The caller, claiming to have been in rehab with Paulilla, stated that she had confessed to being an accomplice in the killings. On July 19, 2006, the police located and detained Paulilla in San Antonio. During the investigation, 70 bottles of heroin were found in the couple's room, leading to the detention of Rott as well. Rott informed the investigators that Paulilla had admitted her involvement in the murders after their arrest. Paulilla returned to Colorautis, who was still alive and attempting to call for help, and beat her to death with a revolver. Initially, Paulilla denied killing her friends, but later confessed, blaming her ex-boyfriend, Christopher Snyder. On July 21, 2006, Paulilla and Snyder, who was still at large, were charged with capital murder. Due to the risk of flight, Paulilla's bail was set at $500,000. In July, one of Snyder's family members informed him of the arrest warrant issued in connection with the murders after Paulilla's arrest. Police were dispatched to Greenville following tips that Snyder may have died by suicide, and they searched the area where he was last seen. His decomposing body was found in a densely wooded area on August 5, 2006. It was later determined that Snyder had passed away due to an overdose of prescription drugs. Paulilla was convicted of 4 counts of capital murder on October 13, 2008. Despite being spared the death penalty due to being a minor at the time of the crimes, she was sentenced to life in prison the following day. On November 29, 2008, Paulilla appealed the court's decision regarding her bail amount of $500,000, alleging that the trial court had misused its discretion. However, an appeals panel upheld her original sentence, ruling that the court had not acted improperly. Paulilla is currently incarcerated at the Mountain View Unit in Gatesville, Texas, and is scheduled for release in 2046 at the age of 60. Our story today brings us to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where 26-year-old Amara Banks and her children resided. Amara, also known as Jerica, was a devoted mother to Zania, aged 5, Camaria, aged 4, and Arzel Jr., affectionately called Zell, who was 21 months old. Her former partner, Arzel Ivory, was the father of Zell and Zania, and despite living a few miles apart, he was actively involved in their lives, often taking them to daycare. Jerica hailed from a large, tight-knit family with 5 siblings, and her brother David mentioned that her world revolved around her children. She prioritized them above all else, working tirelessly to provide them with everything they needed. Jerica was a gifted musician who excelled in playing the violin, having graduated with honors from art school. Over the past few years, she had strived for independence and sought to distance herself from Arzel. Although he expressed a desire to marry her, Jerica made it clear that their relationship was purely co-parenting, devoid of any romantic involvement. She focused on her children, working extra hours at the local hospital's laundry room to save up for a new apartment and a fresh start. Zania and Camaria were described as curious and mischievous, sharing a strong bond and always wanting to match outfits and belongings. David noted that they were like 2 peas in a pod, often mistaken for twins due to their closeness. Zell was a cheerful child, adored by his sisters who enjoyed playing with him and carrying him around. However, tragedy struck Jerica and her family unexpectedly when Zell passed away before his 2nd birthday due to bronchitis complications. Jerica was devastated, yet she poured all her efforts into ensuring he received the best farewell possible. She even established a fund to cover the expenses of a Lion King-themed funeral for him. Zell's funeral took place on February 7th, 2020. Once the day ended, Jerica and her 2 daughters returned to her sister's house. Jerica had a glass of wine and requested her sister to drive her and the girls home. They made plans to have brunch together the following day, with Jerica mentioning she would retrieve her car at the same time. In the early hours of February 8, 2020, the 3 of them arrived back at the apartment on the 5900 block of North Sherman Boulevard. Shortly after 1:30 a.m., the tranquility of the apartment complex was abruptly shattered. A resident heard and witnessed a woman running through the parking lot. She was barefoot, with blood coming from her mouth, screaming for her life. Then she disappeared, leaving an eerie silence behind. Unbeknownst to them, it was Jerica. Another neighbor reported hearing shouting at 1:51 a.m. Living next door to Jerica, she heard thumping noises against the wall, resembling someone being violently assaulted. She also saw Jerica screaming and barefoot, followed by a man dragging her back inside and slamming the door shut. 911 was dialed, with the neighbor pleading for help due to the distressing situation. Police arrived at the apartment just 9 minutes later, but struggled to pinpoint the exact location of the distress call. A pair of officers patrolled the area, driving through the complex with their windows down. Afterward, they parked their vehicle for a brief 10-minute period to observe the surroundings. They reported that there was no visible or audible evidence of an argument or domestic disturbance, and subsequently left the scene. The call operator had categorized the call as a priority 2, which did not necessitate an immediate response. Unfortunately, the dispatcher failed to relay the information that the caller resided next door to the source of the noise. Consequently, the officers were unable to locate any evidence upon arrival, a decision that multiple officials later acknowledged as an incorrect course of action. As time passed and brunch approached, Jerica's family grew concerned and attempted to contact her. Their primary objective was to check on her and the girls, as well as confirm their plans. However, Jerica did not answer any calls. Valeria, Jerica's mother, described her daughter as a creature of habit, always predictable in her actions. This sudden lack of communication raised alarm bells for the family, as they instinctively sensed that something was amiss. Given the recent events, it was highly unlikely for Jerica to disappear without a trace. Trusting their intuition, her family promptly filed a missing persons report. Eventually, the police discovered that the early morning call pertained to Jerica herself. They proceeded to search her apartment for any clues. Although there were no signs of forced entry, Jerica and her daughters were nowhere to be found, and all their belongings remained untouched. Notably, investigators noticed a sizable hole in one of the bedroom walls, an absent comforter from one of the beds, and a napkin stained with what appeared to be blood. However, aside from these anomalies, the apartment appeared undisturbed. Further investigation revealed that there had been no activity on Jerica's phone or social media accounts since she returned home that night. This raised a significant cause for concern. Jerica's sister, who had driven her and the girls home earlier that morning, expressed her concern, stating that Jerica's behavior was out of character. She emphasized that Jerica never runs off or ignores people, no matter the circumstances. Her sister firmly believed that Jerica would eventually reach out to her. As the family and friends initiated their search efforts and contacted everyone they could think of, the police managed to establish contact with Arzel, Jerica's ex-boyfriend, who was 25 years old. Approximately 24 hours had passed since Jerica was dropped off at home. Arzel informed the detectives that during their last conversation, Jerica was understandably upset about the funeral. They had an argument in her apartment, which led Arzel to suggest sleeping in his truck instead of staying in the apartment. Jerica became agitated and started shouting outside. Arzel had to persuade her to come back inside. Eventually, the fight subsided, and Arzel went to sleep in his truck before going to work the next day. Since then, he hadn't heard from Jerica. Arzel claimed to have no knowledge of their whereabouts, but mentioned that he would be out of state for work and could discuss the matter further the following week. However, he couldn't offer any immediate assistance. His reaction seemed peculiar, especially considering his occupation as a local security guard. It raised suspicions as to why he would suddenly leave for work hundreds of miles away and then return. The possibility of abduction now crossed their minds. In cases of severe endangerment or child abduction, Amber Alerts, which stand for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response, are activated to aid in locating the missing individuals. The objective is to promptly notify the community for assistance in the search, which is disseminated through various channels such as radio, TV, road signs, and cell phones. However, in this particular case, there was a delay of almost a week since the girls were last seen, which is unusual for Amber Alerts. Typically, Amber Alerts are resolved within hours due to the immediate response and widespread awareness. Unfortunately, the situation was not looking favorable, as valuable time had already elapsed. Police Chief Alfonso Morales justified this decision by explaining that issuing an Amber Alert requires certain criteria to be met, and initially, foul play was not suspected in this investigation. He further mentioned that Milwaukee police are obligated to publicize information or photos only if the missing person meets specific criteria related to age, health conditions, and mental state. Nevertheless, the authorities were tirelessly working to locate the 3 individuals and vowed to continue their efforts until they succeeded. As the investigation intensified, officers revisited Jerica's apartment, this time accompanied by a cadaver dog. The dog quickly reacted in the girl's bedroom, leading forensic investigators to discover human blood in their closet. Additionally, the cadaver dog directed investigators to a specific area of carpet in another room, which, upon inspection, revealed a floor drenched in blood. It became evident that an attempt had been made to clean up the scene, as copious amounts of bleach were found throughout the apartment. The combination of the neighbors' reports and the discoveries made inside the apartment heightened the level of concern beyond initial expectations. The search had been ongoing for nearly a week when the police received an unexpected call from Arzel's father, who resided in Memphis. He informed them that Arzel had just contacted him from there, which was approximately 600 miles away from Milwaukee. During the phone conversation, his son calmly admitted to the murders of Jerica, Camaria, and Zania before obtaining a firearm and heading to Memphis to start anew. Memphis authorities contacted the Milwaukee police, leading to a warrant for Arzel's arrest and extradition, but the whereabouts of the trio remained unknown. Upon locating him in Memphis, he was charged with aggravated battery. Despite the situation, he cooperated with detectives, confirming his father's claims and providing information on the incident and the victims' locations. The bodies of Jerica, Zania, and Camaria were discovered in a garage behind an apartment building on West Burleigh Street's 47th block, near his residence. The bodies were charred and showed signs of an attempted dismemberment, followed by being set on fire post-mortem. Autopsies revealed that all three had been strangled. Arzel Ivory's charges were promptly upgraded to 3 counts of intentional homicide and 1 count of aggravated battery. His plea was yet to be determined. Valeria expressed gratitude for his father's actions, as they might not have learned the truth otherwise. The incident was tragic, shedding light on the pressing need for increased support and resources in cases of domestic violence. The loss of Jerica and her children within a month had a profound impact on many. A GoFundMe campaign was initiated to assist with funeral expenses, with the Milwaukee mayor condemning the case as horrific. He emphasized the shocking brutality of the situation, reflecting on the escalating domestic violence-related deaths from 2018 to 2020. Arzel provided a grim account of the events during an interview, citing the breakdown of their relationship following the loss of their baby son, Zell, who had severe respiratory issues, a constant worry for Jerica. He had a scheduled surgery to remove his tonsils in order to improve his breathing. Arzel attempted to drop him off at daycare, but they refused to take him due to his illness. He refused to eat or take his medication that day. Arzel tried to wake him up from a nap, but he appeared motionless and made strange gasping sounds. Instead of immediately seeking help, he waited over an hour before placing a nearly unconscious Zell in the car and picking up the girls from daycare. By the time he arrived, Zell had slumped to the side, leaning against the car door. Arzel drove around aimlessly, unsure of what to do. He made a stop to buy snacks before finally deciding to go to the hospital. Unfortunately, it was too late. Nurses discovered that Zell was unresponsive and had turned blue, unable to find a pulse. Arzel had noticed his breathing difficulties 2.5 hours prior. At 5:17 p.m., just a few months shy of his 2nd birthday, Zell was pronounced dead. Jerica was both furious and devastated, expressing that she could never forgive Arzel for his inaction and disregard for their child's well-being. Her family shared the same sentiment, believing that he had taken the lives of 4 family members, not just 3. During Zell's funeral, Jerica carefully selected who would speak and asked her mother, Valeria, to deliver a speech. However, as Valeria prepared to speak, Arzel hastily approached the front and began talking. Jerica remained silent, knowing it was not the appropriate time to react. Nevertheless, her family later revealed that she was seething with anger that he had the audacity to stand up and speak. After the funeral, Arzel claimed that he went to work and later visited Jerica's apartment at 1:30 a.m. She was furious and upset, shouting at him that he didn't care about Zell and that he was responsible for his death. She even expressed her inability to look at him. Arzel informed the officers that she was merely causing a scene. He alleged that she grabbed a knife and cut his wrist, prompting him to retaliate by grabbing her and forcefully slamming her head against the wall twice. This was the opening that law enforcement officers initially noticed upon entering the scene, and it was also what the neighbor had overheard through the wall. The woman began bleeding from her mouth and tried to flee, but he forcibly brought her back inside the apartment and proceeded to strangle her with both hands. He callously remarked that it seemed Jerica was not resisting, so he assumed she desired death, and he was merely assisting her in achieving it. He informed investigators that he couldn't bear the thought of the children growing up without their mother, so he felt compelled to end their lives as well. He kissed his daughters and told them, "Daddy loves you," explaining that Mommy wanted them in heaven with her, before strangling them too. Initially planning to dismember all 3 victims, he changed his mind upon discovering a bone, likely the source of the blood pool. Subsequently, he wrapped their bodies and transported them to his vehicle. While driving around Milwaukee contemplating his next move, he recalled his former apartment complex had a 4-car garage with a faulty lock. He proceeded there to conceal the bodies and attempted to set them ablaze, but the fire was insufficiently intense. Consequently, he purchased gasoline from a gas station, returned to the garage, doused the area, and ignited it. He then acquired a firearm and fled to Memphis. The detached manner in which he recounted these events left the officers astounded. Arzel claimed it was his family, and as the one who brought his children into the world, he had the right to take them out of it. Despite his shocking confession, he initially pleaded not guilty and was detained on a $750,000 bond. Subsequently, he altered his plea to not guilty by reason of mental illness, but following numerous evaluations in September 2020, a medical professional determined there was insufficient evidence to support this defense, leading to its dismissal. Consequently, in April 2021, Arzel Ivory once again changed his plea, this time to guilty of 3 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. Under the state's regulations, he was subject to a mandatory life sentence, leaving the judge with the decision of whether he could ever request release under extended supervision. Arzel's lawyer highlighted his schizophrenia diagnosis and previous suicide attempts, urging the judge to consider allowing him to petition for extended supervision after completing 40 years in prison. Prior to his sentencing, Arzel expressed remorse, acknowledging the impact of his actions on the victims' families and the world. Despite the attorney's plea, the judge denied the request for early release after 40 years, citing the severity of the offenses. The judge ordered life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision, along with mandatory mental health and substance abuse treatment. Additionally, concerns were raised about the handling of the initial 911 call and whether different actions could have been taken. The delay in the media's awareness of the case raised questions among people. It took some time for the story to circulate, mainly because Jerica's family had to contact the stations themselves. Additionally, the Amber Alert was issued a week later. When the media finally reached out to the police for information on the case, they were informed that it was not considered a critical missing persons case. An internal investigation later revealed that the 911 dispatcher had failed to include crucial details when logging the neighbor's call, resulting in a lack of urgency in pursuing the matter. The dispatcher resigned before the investigation concluded and subsequently took a position as a prosecutor in the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, only to resign from that as well. The acting police chief of the area at the time fired the 2 officers who had responded to the apartment that morning for their failure to conduct a thorough investigation. However, the officers appealed and were reinstated, although they received suspensions instead. During the hearing, one of the officers expressed regret, stating that they would never know what they could have achieved with accurate information. The other officer added that they had replayed the events in their mind countless times, wondering if they could have altered the outcome. This burden is something they must live with. On Jerica's final day, she experienced the anguish of losing her baby boy, whose life was tragically short and filled with pain, despite her efforts to help him. Just a few hours later, she found herself fighting for her own life and for the safety of Zania and Kamaria, whose experiences during that time remain unknown and potentially equally terrifying. The Banks family is burdened with an unimaginable pain that is difficult to comprehend. Jerica's sister expressed the immense guilt she carries, stating, "Every day I am reminded of the decision I made to take her home, and now I will never have the chance to see her again." In a heartfelt tribute, the Banks family has joined forces with the Sojourner Family Peace Center in Milwaukee. Sojourner, a non-profit organization, offers a wide range of support to nearly 8,000 individuals annually, particularly those affected by domestic violence. Together, they have initiated plans to commission a beautiful glass window to be installed at the center. This window will portray Jerica, Zania, and Camaria walking hand in hand towards a brighter future, symbolizing their journey towards safety, justice, and healing.